Welcome back, everybody. We are back with live with DET 075. This is now our 5th episode. I am one of your co-hosts, Cadet Captain Jordan Lewis. Of course, we're joined by other members of the PA team, Cadet Third Class Kinghorn, as well as Cadet Hasanagic. Today, we feature our 5th guest, a B2 pilot and SDSU Detachment 075 alumni, Captain Jordan Tencati. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, guys. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. So it's a pleasure to have you here. We're super stoked that you're here with us today. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a quick rundown of kind of your background and how you got to where you currently are?
All right. So you said quick. So obviously I'm DET 75 alumni. I was a San Diego State grad. I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I got picked up for UPT, so flight school. From the time that I graduated, I went on over to Laughlin Air Force Base for UPT, undergraduate pilot training. From there, super blessed, and I was able to get the assignment flying the B2, which encompasses a couple different things. One of which is before I could fly the B2, they basically said, we need you to be a T-38 instructor pilot first, so you can get some hours and some flight time and some flight experience and whatnot. So after Laughlin, I went to Randolph for T-38 instructor training. And then from there, I came to Whiteman. So now I'm at Whiteman Air Force Base. I've been here for about 2 years. Coming up, probably sometime in the spring, I'll start B2 training. So since I got here, I've just been a T-38 instructor.
Super cool. So growing up, did you have any specific interests or experience in flying planes, or what got you kind of headed down this path?
Dude, it's kind of funny because, you meet people all the time, especially in my business, where I'm around pilots every day. You meet guys that are like, oh, I've been wanting to fly since I was 4 years old. And it's like, I think about it, I didn't necessarily have that idea. That I wanted to be a pilot really until I got to college. Once I got to SDSU, obviously I did ROTC right when I started. I started college, I think fall of 11. That spring, so spring of 2012, we took a trip out to Edwards Air Force Base up in Palmdale. And we got to do a lot of cool stuff. We saw Northrop Grumman up in Palmdale. We got to tour the production line to the Global Hawk. We got to tour a lot of Edwards Air Force Base, including the test pilot school, which probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. One of the coolest things I've ever done. We got to tour that. We got to talk to a lot of the test engineers that are out there about the F-35 program, and we'll see a lot of cool museums and whatnot. And that's honestly where the spark started. I kind of got the idea like, oh, maybe I could be a pilot, and then started looking more into it, and here I am.
Going back, what made you join ROTC in the first place? Do you have any family inspiration that came from that, or what was your driving force for wanting to serve?
Yeah, dude, I actually have to give all the credit to my uncle. He did 22 years enlisted in the Air Force. He was an aircrew flight equipment guy. Has a lot of cool stories about some of the equipment he got to deal with. He actually was, those guys deal a lot with, G suits. They deal a lot with harnesses. They, pack parachutes and whatnot. And so just hearing all the stories that he got, from his deployments and his career. His son also did ROTC. So a cousin of mine who's now a major in the Air Force, he did ROTC as well, kind of told me about the program and stuff. And this was just before, I was about to start my senior year of high school. So didn't know what ROTC was, didn't know anything about it. I knew what the academy was. Obviously, a lot of people know what the academy is, but they told me about ROTC, and they're like, yeah, you can go to college and you'll obviously be training and stuff to be an Air Force officer. So kind of bit into that, started looking into it more, and signed up right when I graduated high school.
Cool. So evidently the pilot dream became a reality for you. The question I have is, after, getting your pilot slot, choosing your AFSC, how did you end up coming to the B2 route? And what was your first assignment at Drop Night?
Dude, so it it's kind of funny, man. When I got to Laughlin, I was all about the C-17. That's what I wanted. I wanted to go travel the world. I'll tell you guys right now, if you want to be gone like 280 days out of the year, C-17 life is for you. You're going to be gone a lot. You see a lot of cool stuff. And that's what I wanted going into it. When I got to Laughlin, one of the things that they make you do is while you're waiting, they give you what's called a casual job. So basically they just put you around base and make you work until you start. You know, they're paying you, why not put you to work? So they actually put me out on the flight line, which is kind of a funny story. They put me on the flight line as a crew chief with the T-38s. So if you didn't know like UPT and how it all works, when you go to UPT, you start out in phase 1, 2, and 3. So phase 1 is all academics and you're learning about the T6. Phase 2, you're actually flying the T6. You hit the flight line. You're probably going to get anywhere, I don't know what the syllabus is looking like nowadays, but it's about 5-6 months long. You're going to fly the T6. And then from there, you're going to go either the T-38 route, the T-1 route, or helicopters. It's kind of where it was when I was going through it. The Air Force is constantly changing its syllabus, but that's how it was for me. So if you're going T1s, you're going cargo, you're going tankers, you're going something heavy. Obviously helos, you know, very obvious in what you'd be doing over there. T-38s, that's where your bomber fighter guys are coming from. At least that's where it's intended to be. You know, sometimes they switch it up, but that's what that's for. So when I showed up, I was like, dude, I'm flying the T1. I'm going to be a crew dog. I want to fly with someone. I want to hang out with someone, and I want to go see the world. So when I showed up and got my casual job, I became a crew chief with the T-38s. So I was around those things for, 7-8 hours a day, taxiing those guys in, launching them out, and everything. One sidebar, it's kind of weird that that's a like on-the-job training because it's like I don't really know much about it. But talking to all the instructors, man, that's kind of where it came down to it. When I was out there, I would talk to all the instructors, as they were about to get into the plane and as they got out of the plane. Learned about what those guys did, talked to a lot of bomber dudes, talked to a lot of fighter guys. And I was like, okay, well, the T-38 is a pretty sick jet. You get to go fast. It has afterburners. You don't get that with the T1. Maybe I can still get C-17s, but go the 38 route anyway. So I was lucky enough after T6s to get picked up to go to the T-38 side. And dude, after talking to a bunch of bomber dudes and talking to guys that were predominantly air to ground, so that's going to be obviously your bomber guys, your Strike Eagle dudes. Those guys are doing a lot of air to ground work nowadays. Dude, I got the itch. So I put all the air to ground planes up at the top. So if you don't know, leading up to your assignment night, you basically, if you're a 38 guy, you're rack and stacking everything in the Air Force inventory. It's from your bombers and your fighters down to your cargo, the AWACS, the E8s. You're rack and stacking everything because anything is possible. You're universally assignable. And so I put all the air to ground at the top. But dude, I had no idea that you can get a B2 out of pilot training without speaking up first. Like I thought it was like day one, you had to show up, knock on your commander's office and be like, yo, I want the B2 FYI. Had no idea that like I didn't have to do that. I thought there was an application process, and that's something that maybe we can get into later, but there's a whole hiring board and stuff, being that it is the B2. And it's kind of funny, like they were kind of teasing me at assignment night on what it was going to be. They're like, oh dude, you're gonna FAPE. If you don't know what that means, that's first assignment instructor pilot. You basically get picked up to stay there. They're like, hey, you get to stay at Laughlin for 3 more years and teach students, and everyone's joking around with me. And they're like, dude, you're going to T-38 instructor training. Like that's going to happen. You're going. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. And then, dude, I walk up there, man, and boom, a B2 pops on the board. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is a large plane. That is not a T-38. And, it was obviously a huge shock to me. And I love the plane. It is such a unique aircraft, unique community, a very unique mission set. But I mean, lo and behold, I still had to go to T-38 instructor school anyway. So that they weren't lying to me, at least.
Yeah, so some aircraft in the Air Force, I know, for example, the U-2, you have to have a certain amount of flight hours, operational flight hours, before you can even apply for that job. So I'm assuming you thought it was the same thing like that, but it turns out the B2 is like a secret menu item in the U.S. Air Force inventory.
Dude, so it's funny you bring that up, man, because it is actually they do kind of require some a certain amount of hours, which is why they wanted me to become a T-38 instructor pilot. So it's not like I had to stay at a pilot training base or whatnot. I'm still able to come up here. What a lot of people don't know is that we actually have T-38s up here. And the reason we have them is because, dude, the B2 is too expensive to fly all the time, right? Granted, we only have like 20 of them. And, maintenance can always go up or down depending on how things are going or the weather and whatnot. So, those guys aren't flying the B2 quite a bit. So they throw them in the T-38, let them keep their hands warm and stuff. So basically, I sit in the back seat, keeping those guys safe, while also racking up those hours needed to kind of move on into the training. There isn't like a set number necessarily to start. With some of the upgrades that you get in the B2, they do require a certain amount of hours, but it's more so the airmanship, right? There's a lot of what we call administrative stuff with flying that you just kind of have to have down set. Like you have to have good to go, ready to go. So then flying the B2 is what you're focusing on rather than the admin stuff, which is more just coming natural because you have that experience. So very similar, yes, but they are trying to what they call, I think they're calling it the normalization of the B2, which is why they bring us.
So as far as any specific training for the B2, is there anything special beyond going through basic pilot training? And can you touch on that or describe that?
Yeah, are you talking about B2 specific training?
Correct.
Yeah, so, all right, so I can kind of run you through just kind of the basic idea of what you'll do when you get here. So when guys show up here, they first come to our squadron and they get their T-38 qualification, because first and foremost, you got to have that so that, again, you can fly it on the side. Then, so we belong to the schoolhouse. I'm with the 13th Bomb Squadron, and the T-38s and the B2 schoolhouse all are encompassed into one. And then you'll go through what we call IQT. So initial qualification training is what it stands for. It's about 7-ish months, depending on the time of year, because weather, like I said, weather could always be an issue. Maintenance could always be an issue. You never really know what's going to happen. But you'll go through what they call IQT first. And it's a little bit unique because we own it. We own the schoolhouse. A lot of other platforms, you'll go somewhere else for school, for basically training fighters that go to B course. A lot of the heavy guys, C-17s, 135s, KC-10s, they go to Altus in Oklahoma for training before they get to their units and stuff. Everything's here. So in IQT, you'll show up day one. You're gonna hit the ground running with academics. That's always what happens first. You're gonna get academics. Ironically, actually from Northrop Grumman. We have Northrop Grumman contractors that are here that will teach us, because obviously they own it. But they're going to teach you everything that you need to know about the systems and whatnot. A lot of those guys too are prior B2 pilots anyway, so they kind of give you the down low and what the pilots need to know. But they're going to teach you. You're going to do probably 23 to 25 exams on different things that you'll be doing, whether it's systems, whether it's weapons. You won't really get into tactics yet, because you'll get into like some tactics and stuff, but that's going to be more so for mission qual. But after that, you're going to hit the flight line just like any normal like aircraft training. You're going to then hit the flight line and you're going to do a certain amount of rides. In those, obviously takeoff and landing, make sure you can do that. That's, again, admin, making sure you can do that. You will drop, not live weapons, but you will drop it at some point just so you can see what it feels like to drop and everything. And then the other big thing is air refueling. So practicing air refueling, if you guys have ever seen that, or I don't know if you guys have been on any KC-135 rides. It's very cool to watch, but it is also, it can be very finicky. It's very kind of have to be light on the throttles and your corrections and whatnot, but just a plethora of different things that you kind of have to master. And it's like 9 or 10 rides that you have to get all this done in, and then you do a check ride. Again, that's 7 months. Then from there, you're going to get pushed over to the operational squadron. So right now that's 393rd Bomb Squadron. You're going to go over there and you're going to do what's called mission qualification. And that's when you're going to get all your different certifications. You're going to get your certifications in conventional weapons. You're going to get your nuclear weapons certifications. You're going to get basically everything that you can think of mission set wise to basically be combat mission ready once you graduate. And that's maybe 3 months-ish. And then there, like I said, then you're just part of the squadron. There's different upgrades you go through too. So normal like aircraft commander upgrades, you become a flight lead upgrade. So when you do formation with the B2, and then if you want to continue on and whatnot, then you can get into flight instructor.
I noticed that you mentioned a lot of the instruction you got initially was from the Northrop Grumman people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really good because I have a lot of questions lined up about the B2 itself and its design. And primarily, so historically, flying wing aircraft like the B2, they've always had a track record for being unreliable and unsteady in flight. And for most of their history, up until the B2, they've been very sort of considered experimental aircraft. What design aspects, what about the B2 makes it safer to fly today than its predecessors?
Well, you said leading up to the B2 was what? Which aircraft?
Flying wing aircraft like the B2.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, dude, a lot of testing went into that thing. I'm blanking on what the project was technically called. But obviously it was under the radar. No one knew, people might have had an idea about it, but no one knew details. It's kind of like, I know we'll probably get into it, but it's just like the B-21. You've probably seen a computerized picture of it, and that's it. That's all anyone really knows about it. So obviously a lot of testing went into this thing. And to this day, dude, like testing still goes into it just to, one, make sure that it's still good to go. And obviously aerodynamically, it is unlike any other plane in regards to how it actually flies. But honestly, man, from what I've heard, because like I said, I don't start training until next year, but from what I've heard, it's actually really easy to fly physically. It's more so systems management. Dude, the computers are doing a lot of it. And the computers are really the ones calculating everything. They're helping you calculate speeds for takeoff and landing. They're helping you do all that kind of stuff. So it's unlike the T-38, because same base, so I'm going to use that as an example. The T-38, which is a plane from the 50s and 60s, where it's a lot of left and right hand. So right hand on the stick, left hand on the throttles, a lot of actual flying versus, like I said, the B2 is a lot of, I don't want to necessarily say automation, because now we're getting into it. Things that we have to remember is it's 80s technology. So it's not always going to be perfect, but a lot of it is computers. There's a lot, like I said, it's a lot of systems management when it comes to flying that thing.
So from your experience, you noticed a big difference between the fly-by-wire controls of the B2 or there is a big difference between the fly-by-wire controls of the B2 and then the T-38, which is, stick and rudder.
Yes, I've heard it's actually very, I don't want to say easy, because then it's going to come off as like, it's not a hard skill set, because, I still think there's, again, leading up to it, I'm pretty sure there's still things that I personally might struggle with. I don't know exactly what those are, but in comparison to the T-38, from what I've heard, yeah, it's flying wise, it's a lot simpler than trying to basically handle the stick to a T-38.
Well, the yoke in the T-38 sometimes give you resistance, especially like during G's.
The yaw?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny when it's kind of funny, like when, as an instructor, obviously, like I want to make sure everyone's staying safe, especially when we get students here that are going through their qualification and whatnot. And the one thing that always stands out to people, especially if they've never flown the T-38 before in their life, is it shakes. It is, I don't know if it's because it's old or if it's just the way the plane is, but it's like, as you're yanking and banking, the thing's moving. the thing shakes. Even when you're just doing touch and goes and whatnot, and you're in the final turn to go land, the thing's shaking. And it's become so, I don't notice it anymore, being that I've flown it for so long. But it's so funny, like when people first fly it, because it almost freaks them out because they think they're doing something wrong. So I'd say out of like flight control wise, that's probably the biggest thing that I noticed. I mean, obviously, like it was a supersonic jet trainer that they built in the 50s and 60s. It was meant to just go fast. That's why it has its little itty bitty little wings. Obviously, being aerospace guys, you guys know that. You guys know aerospace engineering. So, but as soon as like you're picking up speed and you start pulling G's, dude, that thing can't that thing can't hold speed anymore. Like it just bleeds it all off. And it isn't until the shaking stops that you notice how slow you got.
It sounds like a lot of tired vehicles out there that just start to shimmy on the freeway past their prime.
And just a little bit. But don't get me wrong, man, it is fun. I very much enjoy flying that jet.
Can it go supersonic in level flight, or do you need to get altitude before you go supersonic?
So that's the thing. That's the other thing too, man. Is so personally, it used to be in the UPT syllabus that you would go supersonic. Just experience it one time, get above, get to or above one Mach 1.0. But because of how old the jets are, they took it out of their syllabus. I don't know when, but it was before my time. So I've come close. Obviously, I'm watching it, to make sure I don't go supersonic. But it can hold pretty fast speeds. But I'm pretty sure to go supersonic, yeah, you're gonna have to dump the nose from up high and actually make that happen.
Yeah, I'm assuming jets that old, they require a lot of maintenance, especially if they go supersonic frequently. So maybe that has something to do with it. But going back to the B2, from what you've heard, what kind of armament and what kind of weapons does the B2 typically carry out on missions?
Okay. So like I said earlier, you can hold it's a conventional and nuclear bomber, right? So it can hold conventional and nuclear. On the conventional side, it can hold a lot of your JDAMs, so your GBU 38s and 31s, V1s and V3s. That's going to be your 500 pounders for 38s, and then your 31s are going to be your 2,000 pounders. The big one that I like to talk about, again, this is always gets people, is the GBU 57. If you've never heard of it, it is called the MOP, the Max Ordnance Penetrator, I think is what it stands for. This thing is close to, once everything is equipped on it, it gets close to 30,000 pounds, and we can hold 2 of them. It is, it's obviously it's meant to dig down into the ground and whatnot. That's what it's for. But I do like to brag that it's close to 30,000 pounds, and we are the only plane in the Air Force inventory that can hold it.
So like a bunker buster, that's pretty cool. What about nuclear capabilities?
So let's see. I'm not exactly sure what I can talk about in that sense.
How about instead we can redirect it to standoff capabilities, air launched cruise missiles, etc.
Yeah, so we can hold JASM. We typically don't. So that's the other thing about the B2, man, is war is always changing, right? And they're always trying to equip or train pilots in these aircraft to certain mission sets to kind of adjust for certain things. And so we can hold JASM. I'm not exactly sure of the number, but it is not necessarily something that we would probably be picked first to go do. It is possible, but like I said, we probably wouldn't be the first pick out of everyone to go do that. Obviously, like there's a lot of things that this plane and the pilots are trained to do. There's certain things that we are really good at, and those kind of line up with the things that we're meant for. And then there's like little things here and there. So the best way to describe it, man, is that the B2 is night one, kicking in the door type deal. Basically mission planning, how we're going to get to a certain point, certain target, directional, like what that path is going to look like and what we're going to drop, and meeting that time on target, plus or minus, I don't know how much time, but basically trying to meet that target at that certain time. We can be trained to do other things like dynamic targeting, but it's not necessarily our number one mission.
Awesome. And lastly for me, on that note, does the B2 typically operate with other aircraft, or is it just a solo airframe on its own?
Yeah, so obviously, like when we do training missions and whatnot, if you're just doing normal, there will be times where you're just doing normal like missions where you'll take off with 3 B2s and go do whatever. But there are times, man, like when we practice, when we train for like those night one missions and whatnot, like we will train with the like F-35s. I've seen them train with the F-22s and whatnot. I think it was back in, I want to say it was the spring. When they were in England, they were training with the F-35s with the Royal Air Force and whatnot. So 35, those 4th and 5th gen fighters and stuff, it's kind of like escorts and whatnot. And obviously we'll participate in flags as much as we can, help out and whatnot. There's always good training to be done, but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, we do train with other aircraft every now and again.
So I'm gonna take a step back for a second. Going back to when you said that moment that you first found out that you were going to be flying the B2s, what were you feeling? What was the first thought that popped into your head as compared to like picking up another one? Airframe, I mean.
Dude, again, I was in shock because I was expecting to see a small little T-38 on the screen. And it was kind of funny too, because they were kind of teasing me. The way that it happened was, gosh, what was our theme? So like I dropped my, I think it was like casino theme. So like all the options were in playing cards and whatnot on the screen. And the last two up there was the B2 and the KC-135. So in my mind, dude, I'm like, dude, the 135, like that's what I'm getting. Like, there's no way in hell I'm getting a B2. And all of a sudden, like on the screen, they show a boom, like maneuvering, like people are about to start refueling. They see a boom maneuvering. I'm like, sweet, man, 135s. Like, send me to somewhere cool. Like, send me to Florida. Send me to the East Coast. Like, let's go. Like, I'm excited. I'm gonna be excited about this. And then all of a sudden, it shows like a B2 refueling. So my initial reaction was like, what? Super shocked. I think the thing that got me the most, man, was I looked down at the bottom and it said B2s, Whiteman Air Force Base, Knob Noster, Missouri. Being from California, man, I've never been to Missouri in my life. And I looked, I'm like, Knob Noster, Missouri, where am I going? Had never in a million years thought I would end up in the Midwest. But dude, I had so just a rush of emotions, man. I was excited. I think I even saw a video from that night of my reaction. I think I got tackled too by all my classmates because they weren't expecting it either. But dude, it was a cool moment, man. It's a cool moment. I think it all became real too, you know, like, oh crap, like I'm not in UPT anymore. I mean, I still had like 2 more weeks, but the Air Force thing was becoming real, you know? So it was cool, man. It was a really cool moment.
So when you started getting up in the air, did you ever get like that onset flight sickness? Did it attack you as much as it has others? Was it enough to make you sort of question, your decisions? How was it for you?
People will go into it and say like, oh, I love roller coasters and stuff. And in some points it kind of is like that where you're just constantly moving and whatnot. But I remember when I was at initial flight training is what it's called now, out in Pueblo, Colorado. Basically, if you don't have your private license, you're going to go out there for a month first just to play around in a DA-20, aka the lawnmower with plastic wings. And dude, I remember my first flight in that thing. So I've never gotten actively sick. I've never gotten actively airsick, but I do remember like a couple points on that flight being like kind of passive. So it's like where you're starting to feel the nausea, but nothing's happening. Thank the Lord. Yeah, dude. then it just becomes a logistical nightmare if you do throw up, because then it's like, okay, make sure you get it in the bag, make sure you hold it and don't spill it. But no, dude, I'm super lucky, man, that I've never had to experience that. And it's kind of funny too, because as I progressed into like the T6 obviously goes faster. So every time I got faster in the planes following, like it was always the first ride where I was like, whoa, I'm feeling it a little bit, but luckily never had to throw up and never got put in the Baronet chair. If you guys know what that is. You guys know what that guy is?
No, can you elaborate?
Dude, so so if you go to pilot training and you get actively sick and stuff after like 3 rides, if it's still happening, 3 or 4, I mean, I don't really know the number, I never got sent. They put you in what is called a Baronet chair. You've probably seen it, pictures of it at least. It's like where you sit down and they just spin you. They just spin you to force you to throw up almost. So you get used to it. So then it's like easier to overcome is kind of their ideology, I guess. I don't really know. It doesn't look very fun. I've had friends that had to go to that thing and they're still flying today, but it's not a fun experience from what it looks like.
I don't know. I'm a fan of roller coasters, and that sort of sounds appealing to me.
Oh, dude, go for it, bro. I'm not a big fan of throwing up, so.
So, in terms of the price tag on the B2, I mean, obviously this is going to be a question. It being $2 billion, does that
2.2.
ever 2.2? Excuse me. Does that ever scare you in some way, shape, or form?
I wouldn't say scare me, but what I think about is they're gonna trust me with $2.2 billion. I think there might have been a mistake, because dude, it is kind of nuts. Like the price tag on that thing, like you said, it's a lot of money, the most expensive aircraft. But then again, it's something you can brag about to your friends.
That's true.
No, it is a little daunting.
Because of the price tag, do you feel this hierarchy? Does it give it this standing?
Dude, I wouldn't say hierarchy, man, because the way I look at the Air Force, man, is everyone has their mission. Every aircraft has a mission to do. And the B2 just happens to be very, very unique. If you think about it, like the B2 can't go do its thing. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but like the B2 will take off from here, go do a mission and land here. Like it's not landing anywhere else. It can, and it might. I think I've read about in the past where it might have landed somewhere after a mission, after Iraqi freedom started. But ideally, you're coming back here. Guess what you need? You need tankers. You need tankers to get you to there, get to the the AOR, do your thing. You need tankers on the way back. So at that point, I don't feel bigger than the tanker, even though they are assisting me to make sure my mission gets done. But they're overall, we're all trying to get the Air Force mission accomplished. Same thing with fighters, man. Especially if we have like F-35, F-22 escorts, like they're still doing the same thing. Like we need them, type of deal. And then like the Strike Eagles, F-16s, the C model Eagles, like those guys are all doing things that are necessary. So I don't really see it as a hierarchy. I see it as unique. I think that's the word that I like to associate with it. It's just unique.
Speaking of those long haul flights, how do you guys typically stay awake? I mean, if you're flying like 20 hours long.
So basically, if you're going on a long duration mission, they're going to give you meds to stay awake. I personally never tested them. That's something that you do once you do go through training and whatnot to make sure there's no reaction or anything, but they're going to give you meds. It's more of an option, right? I always feel like, I mean, I don't know. I've never been on a mission before. I've done training missions my entire Air Force career, but I feel like there's a sense of adrenaline that you might get if you were actually to go on a mission and whatnot. A level of stress that'll probably keep me awake. but yeah, man, you do have that option. And, I would probably consider it more if I was doing something between 30 and 40 hours long. Oh yeah. I think the longest flight longest combat mission is about 45 hours in the B2. Yeah, you take off and then you land and it's a different day. Maybe two. But yeah, no, it's you do have that option if you need it.
How big is the crew on the B2 when it's operational?
Two. It's always two people, man. It's always two pilots. You've got your pilot in the left seat and you got your mission commander in the right. And that's it. It's a lot different, right? From the B-52 and the B-1, where you've got your WIZOs, you got your E-dubs, you've got, just people that are helping maintain systems and whatnot. But it's just pilots up there. When it comes to like the WIZO type stuff, so the getting targets and weaponeering it and make sure all the coordinates and stuff, like that's the pilots that are doing it. So that's the other thing that's kind of interesting about the B2 is that the fact that it is only pilots in there, there's no one else. So you got a crew of two. So making sure each other's awake, it's kind of important and whatnot. But again, another reason why it's unique.
So you kind of briefly touched on this already, but what does a day in the life of just a B2 pilot look like?
Dude, so it's kind of interesting because it's like you would probably find that it's very much like any other pilot in the Air Force. You're going to have your non-flying job, you're going to have something to do when you're not doing, flying stuff or mission related stuff. And then flight wise, like I said, those guys aren't flying too much. So you might be flying 2 to 3 times a month if you're not an instructor. And you might be flying T-38s that day. You might just be going in to do mission planning stuff. So that's the other thing about the B2, man, is that like it is a little bit easier to fly than most. Where the B2's bread and butter is mission planning. They will mission plan the day prior for a full day. More often than not, you're taking up most of the day prior to get ready for the next day. Obviously, things could always change, so you kind of have to make those on-site decisions when things do change as you're about to go fly. But you're mission planning the day prior. So you might be mission planning that day. You might just be keeping up flight plans that crews will use when they go on training missions. There's exercises throughout the year that people will get ready for. You've probably seen in Air Force Times or the news about when the B2s go on what they're called BTFs, so the Bomber Task Forces, when they will go to places like Diego Garcia, which is where they recently went. They'll go to Fairford, England, Guam, and they'll do that for a month or so. So there might be prep for that you have to do, but it probably looks like any other Air Force pilot, which is kind of what I'm trying to get at. Also simulators, I take that back. Throw in some sims. You might be doing those.
So being that it has a lot of planning and whatnot that goes into it, there's not many of them in the Air Force. What do deployments look like? And are you able to deploy being a B2 pilot?
So like I said, when it comes to deployments, the big thing is those BTFs. It's not your normal deployment where guys are going to the Middle East. You've probably heard this phrase in the news or whatnot, show of force. It's basically just, look, we're capable of going here and we're going to, be doing training missions out here and whatnot. And like I said, you're going to places like Diego Garcia, which is where they recently went. You're going to Fairford. There's a couple others that they might go to, but you're going there, you're flying around, you're integrating with other aircraft. Like I said, back in the springs, they integrated with the Royal Air Force, but you'll fly training missions and stuff out there and whatnot. And then you'll fly back. So not your typical deployment that you would see like with guys going to the Middle East or whatnot, but still equally as important, obviously, for just mission capability.
This question in particular comes from one of our detachment's cadets, and they ask, have you ever flown or desire to fly over the Rose Parade?
So again, I haven't flown the B2 yet, but that's always what everyone wants to do, right? Like that's hopefully one day, man. I'd love to. I would love to.
So are there any AFSCs out there in the Air Force that you specifically interact with that are like essential to your mission?
Yeah, dude. So Intel, right? Intel is always going to be super important, especially with the B2. mission planning, again, bread and butter, we need intel. We need intel to basically give us a full layout on like what we're going to be targeting, why, what are certain contingencies, so intel plays a huge role. Obviously maintenance, dude, maintenance is huge when it comes to the B2. And there's a couple different sides to maintenance that people maybe don't think about is you got your maintainers that are the more obvious ones. You got your crew chiefs, you got the guys that are working on the plane. And there's a lot of different aspects to the plane, right? So you got maintainers for each section of that. Then you got your maintainers that work with the weapons. There's a specific team that maintains them and makes sure that everything's good to go with the weapons in case, we were ever called down to be used. And then there's the maintainers that actually take the weapons and load them up into the jet. So maintenance is huge when it comes to not just the bomber world, not just the B2 world, but like just aircraft in general. Like they get us to fly. They're the ones that get us off the ground. It's kind of the big ones I can think about. Let's see. In regards to interactions, those are kind of the big ones I think about right now. Like I said, obviously I haven't started training yet, but big one, the intel and maintenance are kind of the big ones that I can think about. And then I know in the past they've worked with JTACs. So that's going to be your joint terminal attack controllers. So your TACPs, those are the guys that are calling the shots on the ground. And they might even be JTACs that are stateside that are, helping or that are just watching. They're just watching certain targets and whatnot and kind of passing information on. So they probably play a role, but kind of the big ones that I can think about right now, man.
Piggybacking off that last question, I know that we didn't broach this earlier, but so are the B2s problematic in sort of a mechanic sense? Since you've been around them so far, have you noticed that they, issues arise often?
Man, I think every aircraft has maintenance issues. Things break. It's all man-made, right? So things are going to break. Things have to get updated. Obviously, you have to make sure that the plane actually works, make sure the weapon bays are good to go and whatnot. So I don't think I've seen a lot of issues and whatnot. I think the thing that we run into a lot of is just the fact that we don't have that many. I personally haven't seen any huge maintenance issues, but it's just a big plane. There's a lot going on. A lot of things that have to work.
So one special question that we ask every one of our guests that comes on our show is, what does leadership mean to you?
Dang, man. I feel like that's a question from SOS. Dude, when I think about leadership, I think about the importance of, you can call it a couple different things. You can call it followership, you can call it servant leadership, but I think that's an aspect of leadership that I don't know necessarily falls off with certain people, but I think it's an important one to remember. Remember that, make sure your intentions are right with all decisions and actions that you're making, in that making sure that your intentions aren't self-centered, right? That are there for the team. You're trying to accomplish a mission and you're looking out for your people. That's where I would want to base my decisions and my actions that I make. Make sure I'm thinking about them, making sure I'm keeping them good to go, make sure that they're able to accomplish the mission as well, do what they need to do. If I delegate stuff down, that they're capable and competent to actually get there. And I want to play a role in that just in case they're not. So kind of ensuring that everyone is good to go and everyone's kind of 100% and motivated, obviously, to want to accomplish the mission and kind of keep everyone on the same path. So like I said, you can call it followership, you can call it servant leadership, what have you, but I think that's kind of the big one that I like to kind of bring up when I talk about leadership.
In closing, are there any special words that you have for cadets with aspirations in becoming a pilot in particular?
I'll tell you the same thing I like to tell everyone that is going through UPT or wants to go to UPT. It doesn't take someone that has wanted to be a pilot for a long time. It doesn't take someone that has the pilot hands already. It literally takes someone with a good attitude and a willingness to work hard. Someone that has a good work ethic, someone that has a solid attitude, because dude, Pilot training is it's tough. It can be tough if you let it be tough. I think honestly, me now looking back, I think the hardest parts were just the long days. You know, you're just tired and stuff. But there's going to be obstacles that you're going to have to overcome and whatnot. Things that you've never done before. Things that you're going to have to work hard at and whatnot. And that goes for everyone, even the guy that came in with a bunch of hours. So if you have that good attitude, man, you work well with others, and you have that good work ethic, dude, you'll be solid, man. The instructors will help you out. They're going to recognize that. They're going to help you out, and you know, you'll get through it and whatnot.
All right. So that concludes our 5th episode of Live with Detachment 075. I'm one of your co-hosts, Cadet Captain Jordan Lewis, joined, of course, by Cadet 3rd Class Kinghorn and Cadet 1st Lieutenant Hasanagich. And a big special thank you to our special guest, Captain Jordan Tencati.
I appreciate it, guys. This was fun. Yeah, like I said, reach out if you guys have any other questions.
It was a pleasure having you, sir.